Imagine a moment when the world held its breath, captivated by a spectacle unlike any other. A young, virtually unknown African leader walking onto a global stage directly into what was orchestrated to be his public execution on live television. Millions watched, their eyes glued to screens across continents, as a seemingly unstoppable force, the American press secretary, armed with a reputation for merciless debate and an arsenal of facts and figures, prepared to dismantle him. She was convinced she was about to destroy his credibility, his nation's standing, and perhaps even his career. But what unfolded was not the humiliation she anticipated. Instead, she got schooled, so profoundly, in fact, that a mere 6 months later, the very same woman, a symbol of American political might, was literally sitting in his country, thousands of miles from Washington, D.C., begging to learn from him. This isn't just a captivating tale. It's a true story, a seismic event that irrevocably altered global perceptions of education, intelligence, and the true origins of innovation. It was the most savage intellectual beatdown ever broadcast, a masterclass in humility and the undeniable power of truth. If this story has already gripped your imagination, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will blow your mind, and drop your initial thoughts in the comments below. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. The year is 2025. The setting, Ouagadougou, the vibrant capital of Burkina Faso. At the heart of this unfolding drama stands President Ibrahim Traoré, a visionary leader defying expectations. At just 35 years old, Traoré wasn't merely governing, he was revolutionizing. His focus, education. In a nation often overlooked, he was quietly, yet dramatically, transforming its very foundation, building a system so effective, so innovative, that international organizations, including the esteemed UNESCO, were not just taking notice, but actively studying it. His demeanor was consistently calm, his confidence unwavering, rooted in the tangible changes he had already wrought. Meanwhile, across the vast Atlantic, in the gleaming corridors of power in Washington, D.C., Karoline Leavitt was preparing for what she assumed would be another easy conquest. The new American press secretary had a reputation that preceded her like a thunderclap: aggressive, sharp-tongued, and unapologetically direct. She relished making provocative, often undiplomatic, comments about foreign leaders, particularly those from nations she deemed third world. To Leavitt, this upcoming debate was merely a formality, a prime-time opportunity to reassert American intellectual supremacy. Her preparation starkly contrasted Traoré's. While the young African president meticulously gathered verified data, compelling real-life stories, and concrete examples, his education minister presenting mind-blowing figures of literacy rates skyrocketing from a dismal 29% to an astounding 78% in just 3 years. Nearly 3,000 new schools built, 95% of institutions adopting digital education, and 23 new technical universities established. Leavitt's approach was steeped in preconceived notions. "I want information about educational deficiencies," she snapped at her research team, "anything that shows this African kid doesn't know what he's talking about. A country that barely has electricity can't teach America about education." Her aide, Emily, attempted a cautious warning, presenting Burkina Faso's impressive literacy data. "Karoline," Emily ventured, "their literacy rates have skyrocketed. Maybe you should consider a more respectful approach." But Leavitt waved her off, dismissing the data as inflated numbers fabricated by African leaders to sound competent. Her job, she declared, was to expose reality, and so the stage was set. The days leading up to the global forum were like watching two completely different fighters prepare for battle. One, a quiet revolutionary, armed with undeniable results and genuine wisdom. The other, an arrogant debater convinced of her own unshakable superiority. The buzz in CNN's Atlanta studios was palpable, fueled by Anderson Cooper's promise of a real intellectual battle, not hollow diplomacy. What nobody expected, however, was just how profoundly explosive this debate would become, forever altering the landscape of global education and challenging the very definition of intelligence. The world was watching, unaware that it was about to witness history. The evening of May 22, 2025, arrived. CNN's Atlanta studios hummed with a contained energy, a mixture of anticipation and professional tension. Anderson Cooper, poised at the epicenter of this global event, adjusted his earpiece, the weight of millions of eyes upon him. He had promised A meaningful debate, a real intellectual battle, and the air crackled with the expectation of fireworks. The cameras rolled, the lights flared, and the world leaned in, ready to witness what promised to be a fascinating forum. "Good evening, world," Cooper began, his voice calm, yet carrying the gravitas of the moment. "Tonight, we have a fascinating forum between two individuals poised to reshape our understanding of global education, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and our own press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. The screen split, a visual representation of the ideological divide about to be laid bare. On one side, Ibrahim, regal and composed, seated in his presidential office, a backdrop of books and the vibrant Burkina Faso flag behind him. On the other, Karoline Leavitt, in a high-tech Washington studio, exuding an almost predatory confidence, her smile sharp, her eyes gleaming with the certainty of an easy win. Cooper turned his attention to the African leader first. "President Traoré, Miss Leavitt has been a strong advocate for the position that developed nations like the United States should spearhead global education reforms. How do you respond to this perspective?" Ibrahim Traoré offered a polite, almost imperceptible smile. His gaze was steady, calm, betraying no hint of the storm brewing. "Mr. Cooper," he began, his voice clear and measured, "I deeply respect American expertise and the invaluable contributions of their educational institutions. However, innovation, true progress, knows no nationality. Sometimes the most transformative solutions emerge from the most unlikely places, forged in the crucible of necessity rather than the comfort of abundance." That was Leavitt's cue. She seized it, her patience clearly thin. A sharp, dismissive snort escaped her, laced with heavy sarcasm that rippled through the studio and across the airwaves. "President," she interjected, her tone dripping with condescension, "with all due respect, you rule over a country where half the nation was illiterate just a few short years ago. How can you possibly lecture on education to a nation that founded Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, institutions that are the undisputed global benchmarks of academic excellence?" Her words were a deliberate jab designed to belittle, to underscore what she perceived as an insurmountable chasm in credibility. Ibrahim remained unruffled. "It is precisely because we have faced, and continue to overcome, greater challenges that we have been compelled to develop more imaginative, more resilient solutions," he responded, his voice unwavering. "When you have fewer resources, you are forced to be clever, not merely richer." But Karoline wasn't done. She shook her head, a slow, pitying gesture. Her next words, delivered with a smug, self-satisfied air, were the intended killing blow, dripping with bigoted disdain. "Clever, you say? Where exactly did you go to school, President? Which American university did you attend? Because honestly," she paused, letting the implication hang heavy in the air, "it sounds like your education came from guerrilla manuals." The insult was deliberate, sharp, and deeply personal. It was meant to humiliate, to strip him of any perceived legitimacy. A collective gasp, inaudible on air but felt in the studio, seemed to ripple through the crew. Even Anderson Cooper, usually unflappable, sensed the tension escalate. "Miss Leavitt," he interjected, his voice firm, "that was uncalled for, but true." Leavitt shot back, defiant and unwavering. "We cannot pretend that African education is equivalent to American education." The silence that followed was pregnant with expectation. Ibrahim Traoré, who had maintained his composure through every barb, every dismissive sneer, finally took a deep breath. His expression remained calm, yet a subtle shift in his eyes, a glint of something unyielding, suggested that the true battle was just about to begin. He was about to break his silence, and what he would say next would leave the crowd, and indeed the world, frozen. The silence in the studio, stretched taut by Karoline Leavitt's brazen assertion of American educational supremacy, was shattered by Ibrahim Traoré's voice. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. "Thank you for that demonstration, Miss Leavitt," he stated, his eyes fixed calmly on the camera, betraying not an ounce of anger. "Now I know exactly what kind of education you represent." What followed was not a rebuttal, but a masterclass in intellectual destruction. Ibrahim took a deep, measured breath, a subtle cue that the true lesson was about to begin. "Miss Leavitt," he continued, his voice resonating with quiet authority, "since you question my education, allow me to enlighten you on a few details your research evidently failed to uncover," and then, the screens flanking him, previously displaying Only the Burkina Faso flag began to flash with documents. The first, a university transcript, bachelor's degree in civil engineering from Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology first-class honors. Leavitt shifted uncomfortably, her confident posture beginning to crumble. Before she could process it, another document, master's degree in public administration from the Sorbonne in Paris, full scholarship for academic achievement. Her eyes widened slightly. Then, a third, even more unexpected, MBA from the London School of Economics completed while serving as a military officer. The murmurs in the control room were audible, and even Anderson Cooper leaned forward, captivated by the unfolding revelation. But Ibrahim wasn't finished, not by a long shot. He paused, letting the weight of his credentials settle. Then, a subtle, almost imperceptible challenge in his tone. I am also proficient in French, English, Portuguese, Arabic, and 4 local African languages. How many languages do you speak, Miss Leavitt? Karoline, visibly flustered, stammered, That's not the issue. You're absolutely right, Ibrahim calmly agreed, a hint of amusement in his eyes. So, let's discuss relevance. You mentioned Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, illustrious institutions that, interestingly enough, are now researching our educational strategies. More documents appeared on screen, undeniable proof that sent a jolt through the audience. Harvard Business School has established a study program on our rural education model. MIT is adopting our engineering teaching methods for resource-limited environments. Stanford wants to collaborate to learn from our mass digital education model. Leavitt tried desperately to interrupt, but Ibrahim, relentless in his calm dismantling, continued, Do you know why these American universities want to learn from us? Because we transformed an African country with 29% literacy into a continental leader in STEM education within 3 years, something no American state has achieved. These figures are inflated. Karoline protested, her voice tinged with desperation. They're verified by UNESCO, the World Bank, and curiously, the American Department of Education, Ibrahim replied, his composure unassailable. Your own government attests to our educational success. Anderson Cooper, utterly engrossed, looked from one speaker to the other, realizing the monumental shift occurring live on air, just when Leavitt might have thought the onslaught was over. Ibrahim decided to twist the knife of truth even deeper. Miss Leavitt, he began again, his tone still even, since you place such importance on American academic credentials, you'd be interested to know that I'm an honorary professor at 3 American universities. Karoline's face drained of color, turning visibly pale. That's impossible, she whispered, the last vestiges of her arrogance crumbling. University of California, Berkeley, where I teach innovative governance, Columbia University, where I teach sustainable development, and Georgetown, where I deliver seminars on youth leadership, Ibrahim recited, each word a hammer blow to her crumbling facade. I can provide contact numbers for the deans if you wish to verify. That's extraordinary, President, Anderson Cooper remarked, genuinely impressed. Even more extraordinary, Ibrahim continued, a faint smile touching his lips, is that these lectures are always packed. American students want to learn about how we revolutionize education with a budget 50 times smaller than America's largest state. The crowd, frozen just moments ago by Leavitt's insult, was now witnessing her complete and utter intellectual capitulation, live and in excruciating detail. Karoline Leavitt, her face a mask of disbelief, mustered one last desperate attempt to regain some semblance of control. But you're still a poor country, she blurted out, the words laced with a raw desperation that betrayed her crumbling facade. How can you speak of educational success? For the first time that evening, Ibrahim Traoré's calm demeanor softened into a genuine smile, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. Miss Leavitt, he replied gently, his voice devoid of malice, Burkina Faso may be economically poor, but our students consistently outperform Americans in international math, science, and programming competitions, as if on cue, the screens behind him flashed again, displaying irrefutable evidence. Results from academic competitions flash on screen. Last year, their students won 47 medals in international contests. Their 16-year-old programmers develop applications that American companies buy for millions. Furthermore, Ibrahim continued, pressing his advantage with unwavering calm, our college graduation rate is 94%. He paused, allowing the figure to sink in, then delivered the rhetorical coup de grâce. What's the American rate, Miss Leavitt? Karoline sat in stunned, mortified silence, knowing the American rate was significantly lower. She had no answer. 73. Ibrahim answered his own question, his gaze steady. Our poorly educated students graduate from college more frequently than Americans. The implication was clear, devastating, and entirely accurate, but then Ibrahim delivered the most powerful message of the entire debate, transcending the immediate argument and speaking to a universal truth. Most importantly, he articulated, his voice resonating with deep conviction, we teach our young people that intelligence has no color, nationality, or economic status. That respect for knowledge is essential for growth. Lessons that, apparently, some people have yet to learn. Anderson Cooper, captivated, watched as Karoline struggled, visibly, to form a coherent response, her once sharp composure utterly shattered. President Traoré, you've clearly prepared well for this forum, Cooper finally offered, trying to break the heavy silence. Actually, I needed no special preparation, Ibrahim responded, his tone matter of fact. These are simply the realities of our everyday work. Miss Leavitt, apparently, didn't do her homework before making judgments. Karoline, desperate to steer the conversation away from her evident humiliation, tried once more. But let's be realistic about educational resources. The United States spends billions on education. Ibrahim cut her off, his voice still calm, yet firm. And yet, your students fall behind nations with far smaller budgets in international rankings. Maybe money isn't the problem. Maybe it's the approach. Global education rankings instantly materialized on the screens. Global education rankings appear on screen showing America's decline in science and mathematics, while Burkina Faso has moved up 47 places in education rankings over 3 years. The United States has fallen 12 places in the same period. Karoline became visibly agitated, her voice rising in frustration. You're distorting statistics. I'm quoting figures from the US Department of Education itself. Ibrahim stated calmly, if you consider that distortion, perhaps you should question your own data collection methods. Additionally, he continued, our teachers earn good wages. Compared to local cost of living, they can focus on teaching instead of working 3 jobs just to survive. Seemingly revolutionary concept. Anderson Cooper, seizing the moment, posed the question Karoline clearly wasn't expecting. Miss Leavitt, how do you respond to these arguments about educational efficiency? She remained silent for several agonizing seconds, the crushing weight of her intellectual defeat palpable. Finally, she muttered, we need to examine this data more carefully. Of course, Ibrahim said gently, his tone almost compassionate. Careful analysis is always wise before making public judgments. The awkward silence from Karoline echoed through the studio, amplified by millions of viewers who had just witnessed a complete intellectual dismantling. Anderson Cooper, trying to keep the forum moving, asked another question. President Traoré, what advice would you give education systems with limited resources? Ibrahim looked directly at Karoline before responding. The first advice is never underestimate the capacity for innovation when resources are scarce. Necessity forces creativity in ways abundance never can. Our teachers developed teaching methods using cell phones when we didn't have computers. They created science labs using recycled materials when we couldn't afford expensive equipment. These solutions are now being studied by wealthy universities. Karoline finally tried to respond, a faint spark of her old combative spirit. Surely you agree that adequate resources improve educational quality? Of course, Ibrahim agreed, but resources without vision are wasted. Vision without resources forces innovation. The ideal is having both. But if I had to choose, I prefer vision. Then, he delivered another devastating blow, directly referencing her earlier insult. Your earlier question about where I went to school reveals something important, a tendency to measure competence by institutional prestige rather than actual results. Anderson Cooper leaned forward, eager for the elaboration. Can you elaborate on that? Gladly, Ibrahim replied. We teach questioning of traditions, not blind adherence to them. Our students learn to think critically about everything, including educational authority. That's why they ask questions that surprise, propose solutions that amaze, and achieve results that defy expectations. Real education should produce independent thinkers, not prestige worshippers. The contrast between Ibrahim's profound wisdom and Karoline's empty arrogance was now painfully obvious to millions of viewers worldwide. The stage was set for his final, most devastating revelation, designed to seal her intellectual fate and prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the true source of authority. The contrast between Ibrahim's profound wisdom and Karoline's empty arrogance was now painfully obvious to millions of viewers worldwide. The stage was set for his final, most devastating revelation, designed to seal her intellectual fate and prove, beyond a shadow of a doubt, the true source of authority. Miss Leavitt, Ibrahim began, his voice calm, almost conspiratorial. "There's something I should share that might explain our conversation today." Karoline looked nervous, sensing another embarrassing revelation coming, but she was powerless to stop it. "Last month, I was invited to speak at the annual conference of American University Presidents on Educational Innovation in Resource-Constrained Settings. Do you know who organized the event?" Anderson Cooper was visibly curious. "Who organized it?" "President Traoré, the United States Department of Education," Ibrahim said calmly. "Apparently, they value our educational expertise more than their own press secretary does." Karoline was visibly mortified, her face a mixture of shock and utter defeat. "That can't be right," she gasped. "I can provide the confirmation email from Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona if you'd like," Ibrahim offered, a subtle challenge in his tone. He specifically mentioned interest in our accelerated literacy methods and rural STEM education. "More interesting still," Ibrahim continued, delivering the final, crushing blow, 3 American universities have requested permission to send delegations to study our methods on site, including one you mentioned, MIT. Official letters from these esteemed universities appeared on screen, undeniable proof. MIT wants to understand how they teach advanced engineering with minimal resources. Harvard is interested in their youth leadership programs. Stanford wants to replicate their inclusive digital education model. Karoline tried desperately, her voice thin and reedy. "That doesn't mean you're superior to us." "I never said we were superior," Ibrahim corrected gently, his tone embodying the very humility he championed. "I said we're different, that we face unique challenges that develop unique solutions. That valuable knowledge can come from anywhere. True educational superiority would be recognizing that learning is a two-way process. America can teach us much, and we can teach something too. Arrogance prevents both sides from growing." Anderson Cooper shook his head in admiration. "President Traoré, that's a remarkably mature perspective on international educational cooperation. It's a necessary perspective," Ibrahim replied. "In the 21st century, no country can afford to ignore useful knowledge, regardless of its origin." Having been completely, thoroughly, intellectually dismantled, Karoline sat silent for long moments, her posture defeated, her arrogance evaporated. Anderson Cooper was about to close the forum when she finally spoke, her voice noticeably different, soft, humbled, utterly devoid of her earlier bravado. "President Traoré," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "I must apologize." Ibrahim looked genuinely surprised for the first time that evening. "It's not necessary, Miss Leavitt." "Yes, it is necessary," Karoline insisted, clearly struggling with the profound humility of the moment. "I came to this forum with terrible preconceptions about African education. I assumed American knowledge was automatically superior." "Admitting error takes courage," Ibrahim responded, his voice warm with genuine respect. "That's admirable." Karoline laughed bitterly, a self-deprecating sound. "This is well-deserved humiliation. I represent the American government, and I've demonstrated complete ignorance of significant educational innovations, but now you know," Ibrahim said gently. "Knowledge is a process. No one is born knowing everything." Karoline took a deep, shaky breath, her eyes meeting his. "President Traoré," she continued, her voice gaining a newfound resolve, "I'd like to make a formal request on behalf of the American government. I invite you to present Burkina Faso's educational methods to our state secretaries of education." Anderson Cooper was clearly impressed. "That's extraordinary, Miss Leavitt." "It's necessary," she replied, a stark admission of her profound shift. "Burkina Faso has developed solutions that American universities want to study. Our policymakers need to learn as well." Ibrahim smiled genuinely for the first time. "It would be an honor to share our experiences, Miss Leavitt. Education improves when we share knowledge rather than defend territories." There's more, Karoline said, her gaze firm, no longer confrontational but collaborative. I'd like to propose an exchange program between American and Burkina Faso educators. Real, two-way learning. Now you're speaking like a true educator. Ibrahim replied, clearly pleased with Karoline's remarkable transformation. 6 months after the forum that shocked the education world, its impact was still spreading globally. Karoline Leavitt, once the embodiment of American arrogance, was now in Ouagadougou, leading the third American delegation of educators to study Burkina Faso's methods. I never imagined I'd be here learning about education, she said in a CNN interview. Her voice laced with a humility that would have been unimaginable just months prior, but this country has lessons the whole world needs to hear. The exchange program had not only become an international model, with 3 countries requesting similar programs, but Burkina Faso had transformed into a global benchmark for educational innovation. Ibrahim, reviewing partnership proposals in his office, received his education minister, who delivered impressive statistics. Sir, we've received 847 requests from international universities to study our methods. Our educational influence has grown 500% since the forum. The most important thing, Ibrahim said, his gaze drifting towards the window, is that we're proving educational cooperation benefits everyone. America is improving its rural education methods using our techniques, and we're advancing our research with American technology. Karoline, true to her word, had become a fierce advocate for African education. My initial ignorance was embarrassing, she admitted in a speech at Harvard, but it taught me that arrogance is the greatest barrier to learning. The ripple effect spread beyond education. Other sectors in the United States began questioning long-held assumptions about African capabilities. As one political analyst observed, Ibrahim opened doors for genuine cooperation. One quiet evening, Ibrahim walked in the palace gardens with a colleague. You changed global perceptions about African education, his colleague observed. I didn't change perceptions, Ibrahim corrected gently, looking up at the stars. I just showed reality that already existed to a world willing to see it. And Karoline, his colleague asked. She proved something important, Ibrahim replied, a thoughtful smile on his face. That intelligent people can acknowledge mistakes and grow from them. This story isn't just about education. It's about the danger of assumptions, the power of meticulous preparation, and the profound beauty of intellectual humility. It shows us that true innovation doesn't require the fanciest equipment or the biggest budgets. It requires vision, creativity, and the willingness to challenge conventional thinking. Most importantly, it reminds us that knowledge has no passport, intelligence doesn't recognize borders, and sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places. The next time someone tries to dismiss ideas based on where they come from rather than what they contain, remember President Ibrahim Traoré. Remember how preparation beats arrogance every single time. And remember that true strength lies not in stubbornly defending your position, but in being open to learning from anyone, anywhere. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you ever witnessed someone get intellectually destroyed this thoroughly? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story amazed you as much as it amazed me, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible true stories that will blow your mind. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming.